See in the room, just I could see Chief Tobacco, Chief Merrick, Chief Kennedy, Chief Thunder, as well as Chief Wapass from the Treaty 3 territory and her colleagues there. If you look over to my left here, beginning to my immediate left, we have Grand Chief Nepinak with the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. We have Chief Glen Hudson from the Peguis First Nation, and also one of our host chiefs being here from the Treaty 1 territory. We have Chief Delbert Wapass from the Thunderchild Cree Nation in Saskatchewan, as well as we have Professor Palmater. I believe she's a professor at Ryerson University, and she has a background in law, and she's a proxy as well. For Carry the Kettle, for CTK, so right on.
And Chief Jackson.
And Chief Jackson over here to my left.
Saddle Lake, Alberta.
Saddle Lake, Alberta. That's it.
Treaty 6.
We also have Chief Head.
Chief Head?
Yeah, Chief Margaret Bear.
Chief Margaret Bear. I see. Oh, there you are. I missed you, my dear. Sorry, my apologies.
And Vice Chief Dutch Thoreau.
And Vice Chief, there he is. I seen him tip his hat off there to me earlier.
And Tribal Chair Edmund Delbert.
And then Tribal Chair Bellegarde, there you are. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we want to welcome you here this morning. We want to talk about the need for this press conference this morning is to talk about the treaty nations of the Treaty Alliance as they convene here at the Assembly of First Nations here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, this week to reaffirm the commitment to work together in rejecting the current termination of treaty rights agenda of the federal government. There is growing pressure from the grassroots people in Indigenous territories to ensure that international right to self-determination is maintained upon their ancestral lands. I'll open it up, and our first speaker and such that we'll have is Grand Chief Nepinak from the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs to talk about the bills C27, the Transparency Act, as well as Bill C33, the First Nations Control of First Nations Education Act. So I'll open the floor.
Miigwech, good morning. I had my executive aide print off a letter that I've shared with Minister Bernard Valcourt, and I want to thank all of you for coming in for this message from the Treaty Alliance. My role here at the AFN Assembly has been one to raise the pipe in the morning. I received protocol yesterday to bring the Chiefs Unity pipe, and that's what I did. Beyond that, I also shook hands with the drummers, and I offered my prayers for a strong drum and song to get the process started. Not part of the political agenda. As you see, I wasn't part of the political agenda this morning, nor throughout the process over the next number of days. I'm here to bring a message regarding the Treaty Alliance, and as many of you know, for the last number of years, I have began a process of empowerment, firstly for myself by looking at who I am under the Indian Act and recognizing that for generations now our people have been prescribed identities under the status Indian provisions of the Indian Act, and that if we're going to become empowered and renew the strength of who we are as Indigenous people, we will move beyond the Indian Act, and we'll start as individuals by recognizing that prescriptive identity that's provided through the Indian Act process. No one from a bureaucracy in Ottawa should be telling us who's an Indian and who's a member of our family and who can't be. Nobody should be telling that except ourselves. And it's on that premise that I make comments respecting Bill C27 and the deliberate assault of this government on our people, the people who need access to the services because of the legacy and the denial that we've suffered for generations now at the hands of colonial governments. An attack on Saskatchewan First Nations with respect to funding agreements and the withholding of money is an attack on every single treaty person, regardless of which community you come from. So whether you come from Pine Creek First Nation or Barons River, if they're withholding money to treaty people living in Saskatchewan or in Alberta, it impacts you because we're all treaty people, and that's what the Treaty Alliance is all about. It's about rising above these prescriptive identities and these socially constructed barriers that stand in the way of us truly unifying together. That's what the Treaty Alliance is all about. It's about getting beyond that and moving past that and recognizing that empowerment is not in the job title you hold, or the Grand Chief title that you hold, but it's in your commitment to yourself and to your neighbor to do the best you can to empower yourself and your neighbor and your community and your family in a good way and recognizing what's happening. If you marched on the street during Idle No More, if you were one of the thousands of people across the country that marched on the street during Idle No More, now is the time to stand up again and to stand with the people who are being threatened, stand with the communities that are being cut off of their funding. Because there's no such thing as non-essential services, there's no such thing as non-essential money in our communities. Every dime that comes into the communities is needed because of the denial of the human rights that our families live with, the lack of access to services that our families live with. Meanwhile, the vast wealth of our lands is being expropriated and moved into the hands of a very small number of people. This Bill C27 is not about accountability as it's been packaged and sold to you. This bill is about controlling and containing the economic potential of our communities. It's nothing more than that. If you look at some of our communities that have become very strong in developing business relationships within their territories, that's what this bill is targeting. They're trying to get after that information so that they can control it. And I'm asking all of you who marched on the streets in Idle No More to recognize that. Put aside some of the differences that you may have with your leadership back home for a time and recognize that now's the time to stand together. Now's the time to overcome those barriers and that political and psychological warfare that's been launched against our families. We have to hold this government accountable. What about $3 billion that they can't account for? What about the millions of dollars in education funding that they're holding back against our communities just here in Manitoba alone? As a punishment for not falling into their education legislation, the bill that they tried to use to deny the treaty right to education, to take away the jurisdiction of education for our families and contain it within the power of the bureaucratic structure and the minister, whoever that might be, going forward. Where's the accountability there? What about the millions of dollars in bonuses and incentives that they're paying to the senior bureaucrats in every department to implement these funding cuts across the country that impacts every single Canadian? Where's the accountability there? And where's the reporting on those bonuses that they're paying to each other at the expense of our people? Well, they try to hold up themselves as these great balancers of budgets and these great financial people. Meanwhile, it's us that are paying it at the end of the day. It's on the backs of our people every day. That's what the message is all about. That's what's happening in education. In Manitoba, they're holding millions of dollars back right now, and our kids are suffering. Our kids are suffering because of that. They're using education opportunity as a hostage. And they're using that against our children. That's the message that I wanted to share with you today. And the message is about the Treaty Alliance. It's political structures that exist. And if they want relevancy, they've got to put the people first. And that's what the Treaty Alliance does. But recognize first and foremost the responsibility of every First Nation citizen, every Indigenous person. I looked at my name tag, and my name tag says First Nation citizen. It doesn't say Grand Chief on it here at this assembly, because I have no formal role in this assembly whatsoever. But you know what? When I see my name there as First Nation citizen, that's the most powerful presence I can bring to this forum, just as each and every one of you. So let's move beyond these titles. Let's recognize that this is about people. It's about taking care of our families. And let's stand together with these communities who are going to defend themselves. And let's think about these families that are being cut off of their funding. Because it's not one woman on Victoria Island now who's fasting. It's going to be hundreds of people in our treaty communities that are going to be put to the test to overcome the violence that this government is bringing to us. Miigwech.
Good morning. Chief Glen Hudson of Peguis First Nation, Treaty Number 1. Just want to welcome all the leadership to our treaty territory. Also want to express our concerns regarding the C27. Certainly it's an attack on our sovereignty, as the Grand Chief had indicated. It certainly cuts back on a lot of essential funding that our communities need. And there are a lot of communities in the north that don't have access to internet services. And certainly over time, these cuts will impact programs and certainly communities and people within those communities. And this is something that we have to stand up and fight against in terms of attack on our sovereignty. This message comes from many, many communities throughout the north. And certainly at Peguis First Nation, we have the ability to utilize our own source revenues in terms of being able to provide services for our community, but not all communities have that opportunity. So I stand here today in support of the objection to Bill C27 and certainly Bill C33. At Peguis First Nation, we've always had local control of education. We've had a lot of successes. We have people right down from nursery to post-secondary graduates that have masters and doctorate degrees. We can deliver those services on our own, and they're contributing back to our communities. And that's something that must continue in terms of our practice of sovereignty and certainly delivering our education. But as far as this Transparency Act is concerned, as the Grand Chief put it, it's certainly impacting our communities in many, many ways. And it's an attack on our sovereignty, and that's something we must certainly fight against. So I would call on support from our chiefs, our First Nation citizens out there, to stand with us in opposition to these acts. And certainly this is something that I'll continue to support the Grand Chief and certainly all our leadership throughout Canada. Peguis.
Good morning, Chief Delbert Wapass from Thunderchild First Nation. I'm one of the 6 named yesterday by the minister on the non-compliant First Nation. When we talk about accountability, both my membership on and off reserve, they know exactly what I make as a chief. And we use own source revenue in identifying and paying for what the leadership gets paid in regards to travel and salary. When I left the Federation of Saskatchewan Indian Nations, I was making a cumulative probably about $120,000 tax-free. I ran for chief in Thunderchild for a salary of $65,000. I have my Bachelor of Arts degree, I have my Bachelor of Education degree, and I have my Master's in Education. I can guarantee you that if I was to work anywhere else, I would be making more than $65,000. So where's the accountability in that? Which other elected leader within the government can stand up and tell us exactly what they make? Personally, the government has to quit killing our people. When you look at what has happened in the area of post-secondary education in the past, and still today, once we started having a successful Indian, we started getting waitlists. Once we started having problems in different areas, there were cuts. Once our Indian people started becoming successful in economic development, then there's legislation. Yet, the message that keeps going out by the Canadian government is that Indians are a tax burden. Yet when you look at the monies that are used by our own Indian people, those are our monies. Those are Indian monies. Money set aside for Indian people. And who are we paying for? We're paying for their salaries out of our Indian monies. Where's their accountability? Where's their transparency? I have no problem comparing what I make to anybody. My membership, like I said, knows exactly what their chief and council and what their directors make. We've developed an annual report. We've handed out the annual report to our membership. On our website, we have a members only page where they type in their treaty numbers and they access their information on what their chief and councils are doing. Yet we have government that's still trying to use the excuse of accountability and transparency. I think as well for our own people that we need to spend more time possibly educating our own people not to be used by government or the Canadian Taxpayers Federation as props and arguments on going against their own. We have our own people within within the Canadian government that are attacking their own. When you go back and you look at the great leaders that we've had over the course of time in history, who killed them? Who did they use to kill them? They used our people. Now is the time to rise as First Nations leaders, as First Nations grassroots people, and to defend who we are as First Nations people. Harper, we're coming. Thank you.
Good morning. Pamex Lantoni stay John. Nanas mama mo tawi mo. Kataki sego timi gwa. Inawa ta kumyo taksenyan wata. Nanas mo. Good morning and thank you, and I want to bring greetings from Saddle Lake. I'm honored to be here this morning to stand in solidarity with the chiefs that are currently going through what some call a crisis, but I think for me, I'd like to call it as another stumbling block, another barrier. We certainly know how to move through this system. You know, there's loopholes wherever you look. Today, Bill C27 has been an issue for most of all, if not all, First Nations in Canada. I know from the very beginning in 2000, when I first got elected in my reserve in 1999, I said no more. In terms of unilaterally being required to enter into these unilateral agreements, Saddle Lake had put an end to that. But we suffered. We suffered for 3 months with no funding. And many times I looked at our people coming in through the door, wanting their next loaf of bread, wanting their next piece of hamburger. And I thought, what should we do? And the best thing my people have said is, stay the course. We will suffer a bit, but stay the course. And we did that. And it is because of those of you that sit amongst us who are more wise, more knowledgeable, and understanding. You have taught us to use our way, the ceremony, the pipe. This mountain we could not move or budge. At the time the ceremony was complete, I saw it begin to shift. There is strength in our ceremonies. All we need to do is believe. And it goes back to the many instructions that we receive from our elders. They say, Mamo Gamato. Help one another. It takes all of us. And when you look at the cry for transparency from the federal government, it's a farce. This government has operated under the cloak of secrecy right from 2006, when Harper was first elected. I'm not even sure if I'm dealing with the Conservatives anymore, or is it the true colors of the Reform Party coming to the fore? Everything that I have seen come down the tube since 2006 has been racist and discriminatory. And so we need to do what we have to do, and that is to speak up. Support your leaders. I went to Ottawa. I said, okay, in the name of accountability and transparency, please tell me how much of this funding agreement, how much of the funding in this agreement is related to your obligation to provide. I want to know. I need to separate your obligation from the discretionary funding. I'm tired of being told that I'm the worst mismanager of the taxpayer's dollar. Today, I still don't have an answer, but I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to continue. And as far as the Education Act is concerned, Sad Lake has developed their own law. We're at our final stages of passing it through our community members. We're open to share it with anybody who wants a copy. I mean, there's strength in numbers. And I thank Grand Chief Nepinak and those of you that are here to, again, support those of us and those that are striving, I guess, to make ends meet at this point in time because of the threats coming down from the federal government. Please continue praying for those that are in this situation now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all for welcoming me to Treaty 1 territory. It's actually a sad occasion for me to be here today, given what's happened by the federal government towards our people. And make no mistake, this is a move by the Harper government, not against chiefs, not against band counselors, not against Native organizations. It's an attack on our people. And there's really two clear messages that we have to bring forward. One is to the Canadian government, and one is to our people. And I think the most important message is that to our people. We know chief and council salaries now. If that was the big deal, we know all of those salaries. We've known them for years and years, and INAC's been posting them, and the Canadian Taxpayers Federation has been inflating them. Okay, you know them now. We know the average salary across the country of elected leaders is $36,000, $10,000 less than what the average Canadian makes. Okay, we know that now. That is not the cause of our poverty. That is not the cause of our housing crisis, murdered and missing Indigenous women, our children in care, or our overrepresentation in prison. It has absolutely nothing to do with it. And in fact, if Harper could prove that every single chief in this country made $1 million, that's only $633 million. It's a drop in the bucket of what the cost is to run our communities. So get over that part. The real issue is the purposeful chronic underfunding that kills our people. Every year, the people at Indian Affairs, and I know because I used to work there, can calculate with absolute precision how many people are going to die if they don't fund water, if they don't fund the Northern Food Program, if they don't fund housing. We can calculate how many people are going to die. Since when is the Canadian government in the business of deciding who lives and dies? There's more than enough wealth left for everybody. But there's a bigger issue here. There's a deep-seated racism against our people that is not being addressed, and it is clear in all of the suite of legislation that Harper brought forward. You could rename every piece of legislation, whether it's the Clean Water Act, Gender Equity Act, Elections Act, Transparency Act, and it's all about Federal Control Act. And the ultimate purpose has always been to assimilate and eliminate our communities, and when they introduce the First Nation Property Ownership Act, that'll be the end of it. But Harper's greatest weapon is also his weakest. His greatest weapon is if he can turn First Nation citizens against their own leaders. That's the greatest weapon. You take all the power away from the leaders, you make the leaders stand out there by themselves, and a single chief cannot win this war. But it's also his weakest weapon, because he forgets that we have been here for centuries. We have survived everything that the government has thrown at us. Forced sterilizations, residential schools, scalping laws, rape and torture in those residential schools, medical experimentation, starvation budgets, and we're still here as a collective. The one thing about our nations is that it's one for all and all for one. So we can cut Harper off at his knees if we can see through the propaganda. And I'm not up here saying that there isn't a problematic chief somewhere out there. But since when do we make decisions about our nations based on one jerk? He'll be gone. She'll be gone. We can fight with each other after, but we have a grave threat in front of us right now. Because this isn't about cutting chief and council salaries. This is about cutting all of our funding. And it's a historic move that the government is making. So I'm making a call to the people. When under Idle No More, when we came together, it was grassroots citizens and leaders coming together. It was First Nations and Canadians coming together saying, this isn't the Canada we envisioned in our treaties. We can do better. But the other message is also for the Canadian government. And I'm here to call upon the Governor General to remove Prime Minister Harper as Prime Minister. He has violated every single law in this country, not just for First Nations. He's violated our treaties, which are constitutionally protected. And the Prime Minister can't act outside of the Constitution. He's violating our treaties by threatening to cut off our treaty funding. The Queen is supposed to act in the best interests and best benevolence and come to the aid of First Nations in need, not put them into further poverty. Those are the words of our treaties, and that's for our heirs and heirs forever. He's violating the Indian Act. Indian monies are supposed to be used in the best interests of First Nations. They have a fiduciary obligation to spend every single cent appropriated by Parliament to First Nations. Those monies have already been appropriated. If they cut off that funding, they're violating their own laws. So whether it's the Transparency Act or the Education Act, it doesn't matter what it is that we're talking about. Harper is calling our bluff. Do we have what it takes to stand together and support one another and get behind our leaders? Whether they're our favorite people, our worst cousin, our ex. Do we have what it takes to stand as nations and push Harper back? Because if we rely on anyone else to do it, it's not going to get done. And that's what these chiefs are here doing. That's what everybody in this room is here doing. And I think we owe it to our future generations to do that. It isn't just a battle over the Transparency Act. It's a battle over our very futures. I just left a community that had 2 suicides of little tiny children. How many more if they cut our funding? How many more people have to die under Harper's watch? And if the Governor General doesn't remove Prime Minister Harper, then I call on the United Nations to intervene. Canada is at war with our people. Enough of our people have already died, and we can't afford to lose any more. Thank you, Miigwech.
Chief Margaret Baird, did you want to share some words?
She's one of the 6 named from Ochapowase.
Chief from Ochapowase is one of the 6 named in the recent announcement from the federal government, so I'll give her an opportunity to share some words with you.
Treaty 4.
Just really quick out there, I want to acknowledge Chief Ian Mackay from Red Earth Cree Nation. Chief, good to see you this morning.
Good morning to everyone. I want to first of all thank the Creator for this beautiful day that we are given. And I want to thank the elders for the prayers for us at this time. Yes, Ochapowase Nation is one of the 6 nations that have been called upon, that will be going forth perhaps to court. While I haven't received any information pertaining to that, I'm here to speak on behalf of my people, of my community, and all our people across the nations. Ochapowase is back at where it's been from 1998, in which, under the past leadership of the late Chief Denton George, Canada targeted Ochapowase in providing a consolidated audit. And at that time, Chief George went to his people and asked for direction. His people gave him the direction of not to consolidate, not to submit the consolidation audit to Canada, because we were told, one of our leaders at that time shared of what Canada's intention was. An Indian Affairs worker at that time told one of our leaders that Ochapowase was the target. As a result of not submitting our consolidation audit to INAC, we were put under third-party management. And we were told by this Indian Affairs worker that the real reason they were demanding the consolidated audit was because of own source revenue. That person told us that one day we will be paying for our own programs and services. It was just recently when we started remitting the consolidated audit to INAC. But today, Canada has gone too far because of going public with our financial statements. Canada, we will not tolerate this. We will not tolerate the abuse that you are putting upon us. The control, the heavy hammer, especially at this time of the year, Christmas time. Once again, they focus on our children by withholding our funds. They have done that for December. Why is Ochapowase doing this? Why is Ochapowase making the stand? It is because of our inherent right to self-determination. Nobody can tell us what to do. It is our people. It's our people's right to decide that. It's our grassroots people, their wishes of why we do this today. It is our people today back home that are standing before us, beside us, as leaders, as community leaders, saying, telling us, directing us not to consolidate. And we haven't. We rejected the consolidated audit submission to INAC. We have rejected that legislation. Canada, you have your laws. Ochapowase has their own laws. We will follow our laws. That's the direction of my people, and that's why I'm standing. I can't do nothing. I gotta do something, because it's our our future? Are we going to allow ourselves to be extinct? What about our children, our grandchildren, and our future? I'm a woman, I'm a mother, I'm a cook, a grandmother, and I'm a community leader, and I'll do what it takes to stand for my people's rights. What are we going to do now? Well, I welcome this challenge, this opportunity. It's about time our issues came to the forefront. And I stand beside our leaders who make the stand today. And I know there's more out there who support us, but sign under duress. We have done that too in the past. And I know they support us in what we're doing. We are tired of managing poverty, because that's what we are doing. And those are INEX programs that we are administering, not ours. And as far as accountability, our people, my community has their own process. For this past year, while we haven't submitted the consolidated audit to INAC, we reported the federal monies that they gave us. We provided that to them. And with that, it was an unqualified audit. We reported to our own people a few weeks ago the consolidated audit. We also disclosed the salaries that we make. So we have our own process in place. Canada, why are you doing what you are doing? Allow us to be partners. As we signed treaty back in 1874, nation to nation, government to government, you have broken your promise. You are not living up to your responsibility. And we are open and willing to work together, but it has to be a relationship based on trust. Because right now, there is no trust from our part. So with that, I want to say thank you for listening to me. Thank you. Hi, hi.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to bring the press conference to a close. We want to thank everybody for attending. On a note, I just want to acknowledge Ogima Wallace-Fox, who's in the room with us today, and thank him for the work that he's doing on behalf of our people. Chief Nelson Wool as well is here beside him, I believe. Yeah. I want to thank everybody for coming out. I know that everybody's asking about the Treaty Alliance and a meeting that's going to happen during AFN. We're still trying to figure out the details, and as soon as we know, we'll let everybody know on the time and place, okay? Chief.